So a couple days ago, I made a TikTok about how me growing up as a black man, I've realized that I am, more threatening to white England, white world in general. And I'm just reading up some criticisms on theory for university. And look at what I found that links to how that thought process links to history. This combination of violence and sexuality made black men inherently unsuitable for work until they were trained by white men and placed under their discipline and control. To explain these relations, white elites created the controlling image of the buck. Unlike images of African natives who roamed their wild homelands like beasts untamed by civilization, colonialism, the representations of the buck described a human animal that had achieved partial domestication through slavery. If we try to seem less threatening, we're damned. If we simply exist, we're damned. Either way, we are damned unless we do something. What something is, I'm not sure, but definitely being aware of these issues is a start.
Before I get into what that something could be, it's important that we define a buck in its historical context. According to popular stereotypes during the post-Reconstruction era, black bucks are seen as black men that are usually muscular or tall who defies white will and largely destructive to American society. Now, I would argue the entire concept of being a black buck is structured through the white gaze. One can argue the entire Western society see melanated men or men of African descent as being hot-tempered, excessively violent, unintelligent, and sexually attracted to white women. In my opinion, the something that we have to do is reimagine black masculinity outside of the white gaze. I know I'm a little country, so that Texas draw might be strong. I'm saying gaze, G-A-Z-E. The white gaze is a term that was popularized by critically acclaimed Toni Morrison. When she described how it operates, Toni Morrison said the white gaze is the idea that black lives have no meaning and no depth without the gaze. In the simplest terms, the white gaze can be conceptualized as the assumed white reader. When writers craft stories in assumed white, the often cisgender heterosexual male audience, they are writing for the white gaze in action. The white gaze can be expanded to mean in ways in which whiteness dominates how we think and operate within society. Being real, this specific gaze is so insidious and so impactful, it forces our own people to internalize it, and us black men see other black men as being bucks. In my opinion, in order for us to have that I and reimagine masculinity, we have to have a knowledge of self. Self-love, self-care, self-awareness, self-discipline, knowledge of self. And in sculpting this knowledge of self, we have to recognize that the way that we define our manhood cannot be defined in how we dominate other people, especially people in our communities, may it be non-gender conforming people or black women. Huey P. Newton, one of the co-founders of the Black Panther Party, said that power is the ability to define the phenomenon and make it act in a desired manner. And when it comes to defining the phenomenon of black masculinity or black manhood, we have to do it with tenacity. Two things can be true at the same time. I can sit around and critique how toxic masculinity operates in my community while also acknowledging that toxic masculinity does not define what black men are. My manhood is not defined by the small confines of masculinity. Black masculinity. Author Rashay Richardson argues that we underestimate the South's influence on the national understandings of black masculinity. She got intersectional with it too, talking about race, region, and gender. Trying to state it plainly, there is many complexities for how black masculinity is configured in this country. Or how Rashay Richardson puts it, many negative stereotypes of black men, often contradictory ones, have emerged from ongoing historical traumas initiated by slavery. Are black men emasculated and submissive, or hypersexed and violent? We could be seen as passive, docile, and not caring about anything in the world, while also being seen as hyper-masculine, always already angry, and having too much care about things that are meaningless. You know, usually I talk about how this binary of being seen as ratchet versus respectable is put on to black women, but I would also argue this is placed on to black men, but this with different uniqueness. Nostalgic representations of black men have arisen as well. Think of the philosophical, hardworking sharecropper or the abiding, upright preacher. We can juxtapose that to the other black man trope, the gangster, the thug, the toxic masculine, hypersexual, can't control his thing in his pants, always looking to make some baby mamas type thing. And this is where author Rashay Richardson starts to connect the dots from Uncle Tom to gangster. Starting with well-known caricatures as the Uncle Tom and the Black Rapist, Richardson investigates the range of pathologies of black masculinity that derive ideological force from their associations within the South. You know, education is elevation, and we should definitely explore black masculinity from an intellectual lens. Military policy, black liberation discourse, contemporary rap, she argues, are just some of the instruments by which egregious pathologies of black masculinity in Southern history have been sustained. I was reading this article about black masculinity in the United States, right? In this article, it said that many black men self-identify as protectors of their community, among other identities, gendered and otherwise. This protective trope of black masculinity is enforced through social rules such as black men don't get to get emotional in public, humorously captured on ABC's Blackness. When co-workers discuss what black men do instead of crying when they're emotional in public, this trope also appearing through the social media trend Protect Black Women hashtag. I was intrigued by this part right here. It says, creating conflicted expectations of the place and role of black men in their nation and to themselves. We are seen as both protectors of our community and being unequipped to protect ourselves. Despite these contradicting social inputs, black men have not abandoned their role of community protectors. Many choose to take their responsibility and refuse to submit to circumstances of vulnerability despite grossly unequitable resources to be able to do such. I recognize when it comes to many of the videos that I make, a lot of people don't think that I have complexity when it comes to how I see myself and other black men. I know that black masculinity is peculiarly placed in this country, you feel me? The same people that root for us when we slamming touchdowns or dunks is the same people that criminalize us and justify our death. In conclusion, as a black man, I'm conscious about how power and privilege works in our community when it comes to us. And I believe with every fiber in our body that if some of us is free, then none of us is free. And that's the reason why my content is always centered around intersectionality, accounting for all of our liberations.
Chapter 5, The Fact of Blackness. 30 N-word, or simply, look, a Negro. I came into the world imbued with the will to find a meaning in things. My spirit filled with the desire to attain the source of the world. And then I found out that I was an object in the midst of other objects. Sealed into the crushing objecthood, I turned to beseechingly to others. Their attention was a liberation, running over my body, suddenly abraded into non-being, endowing me once more with an agility that I had thought lost, and by taking me out of the world, restoring it to me. But just as I reached the other side, I stumbled, and the movements, the attitudes, the glances of the others fixed me there, in the sense in which a chemical solution is fixed by a dye. I was indignant. I demanded an explanation. Nothing happened. I burst apart. Now the fragments have been put together again by another self. As long as the black man is among his own, he will have no occasion, except in minor internal conflicts, to experience his being through others. There is, of course, the moment of being for others, of which Hegel speaks, but every ontology is made unattainable in a colonized and civilized society. It would seem that this fact has not been given sufficient attention by those who have discussed the question. In the Weltanschauung, I know I'm saying that word wrong, but in the Weltanschauung of the colonized people, there is an impurity, a flaw that outlaws any ontological explanation. Someone may object that this is the case in every individual, but such an objection merely conceals a basic problem. Ontology, once it is finally admitted as leaving existence by a wayside, does not permit us to understand the being of the black man. For not only must the black man be black, he must be black in relation to the white man. Some critics will take it unto themselves to remind us that this proposition has a converse. I say that this is false. The black man has no ontological resistance in the eyes of the white man. Overnight, the Negro has been given two frames of reference within which he has had a place himself. His metaphysics, or less pretentiously, his customs and the sources on which they were based, were wiped out because they were in conflict with the civilization that he did not know and that imposed itself upon him. Listen to what I'm saying now. The black man among his own in the 20th century does not know at what moment his inferiority comes into being through the other. Of course, I've talked about the black problem with friends, or more rarely with American Negroes. Together we protested, we asserted the equality of all men in the world, and in the Antilles, there was also a little gulf that existed among the almost white, the mulatto, and the N-word. But it was satisfied with an intellectual understanding of these differences. It was not really dramatic. And then the occasion rose when I had to meet the white man's eyes. An unfamiliar weight burdened me. The real world challenged my claims. In the white world, the man of color encounters difficulties in the development of his bodily schema. Consciousness of the body is solely a negating activity. It is a third person consciousness. The body is surrounded by an atmosphere of certain uncertainty. I know that if I want to smoke, I should have to reach out my right arm, and take a pack of cigarettes lying in the other end of the table. The matches, however, are in the drawer on the left, and I should have to lean back slightly. All of these movements are made not out of a habit, but out of the implicit knowledge. A slow composition of myself as a body in the middle of a spatial and temporal world. Such seems to be the schema. It does not impose itself on me. It is rather a definitive structuring on the self and the world, definitive because it creates a real dialectic between my body and the world. For several years, certain laboratories have been trying to produce a serum for denigrification with all the earnestness in the world. Laboratories have sterilized their test tubes, checked their scales, and embarked on researches that might make it possible for the miserable Negro to whiten himself and thus throw off the burden of that corporal malediction. Below the corporal schema, I had sketched a historical racial schema. The elements that I used had been provided for me not by residual sensations and perceptions primarily of a tactile, vestibular, kinesthetic, and visual character, but by the white man, who had woven me out of 1,000 details, anecdotes, and stories. I thought that what I had in hand was a construct of a psychological self to balance space, to localize sensations, and here I was called on for more. Look, a Negro. It was an external stimulus that fickled over me as I passed by. I made a tight smile. Look, a Negro. It was true. It amused me. Look, a Negro. The circle was drawing a bit tighter. I made no secret of my amusement. Mama, see the Negro? I'm frightened, frightened, frightened. Now they're beginning to be afraid of me. I made up my mind to laugh myself to tears, but laughter had become impossible. I could no longer laugh because I already knew that there were legends, stories, history, and above all, historically, which I had learned from my Jaspers, then assaulted at various points. The corporal schema crumbled in place, taken by a racial epidermal schema. In the train, it was no longer a question of being aware of my body in the third person, but in the triple person. In the train, I was given not one, but two, three places. I had already stopped being amused. It was not that I was finding febrile coordinates in the world. I existed triply. I occupied space. I moved toward the other, and the evanescence other, hostile but not opaque, transparent but there, disappeared, nausea. I was responsible at the same time for my body, for my race, for my ancestors. I subjected myself to an objective examination. I discovered my blackness, my ethnic characteristics, and I was battered down by tom-toms, cannibalism, intellectual deficiency, fetishism, racial defects, slave ships, and above all, show good eating. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Happy Monday. Welcome back to On the Shoulders of Giants. I am Joseph Ward, continuing my reading of Frantz Fanon's great book, Black Skin, White Mask. And this is chapter 5, The Fact of Blackness. And we are exploring the white gaze and the white gaze effect on how Black men, but Black people are viewed by the white world. And not just by the white world, how Black people are viewed by the world, because under the system of white supremacy, most people view themselves and others through this white gaze. And the white gaze was a term that was created by Toni Morrison. But Frantz Fanon is breaking it down and explaining to us what this white gaze is and how this white gaze affects us how the world sees us and how we see ourselves and each other as Black people, right? And that's the brother Conscious Lee. You see in the video, in the opening video, he was talking about, he was breaking down the idea of the buck, but the idea of the white gaze. And if we go back to Birth of a Nation and all of the propaganda that was used in the early days of in the 1800s, in the mid to late 1800s, 1900s, early 1900s, of how the idea of the Black man specifically was shaped, right? How the Black man was seen as a rapist, a criminal, somebody who's always prone to vagrancy, somebody who's illiterate, somebody who's impulsive, lazy, shiftless, right? Mentally a child. That was the idea of what a Black man was. And the Black woman, hers wasn't any better, right? And we know we have more details about the Black man because that Black male image was ostracized horribly, right? And it still is, because now even the term the YN, right? Because that's the thing about the stereotypes, right? The stereotypes over the years have become romanticized in a bit through the media. And then now you have real Black Americans, real Black people throughout the world who are working hard to live up to those negative stereotypes because they brought the stereotypes to life. And because people actually behave like that, now the stereotypes are being defended. So that white gaze is the root of why we see ourselves the way we see ourselves, why we think about ourselves the way we think about ourselves, why the world sees us how they see us, through the lens of white supremacy. When you see yourself through the lens of white supremacy and you are not the white supremacist, it will be a negative lens that you view yourself through, right? So you have to understand that when you are looking at this content, looking at this information, digesting this information, understanding it, and taking it to use this information to really change our situation, because it's about us reprogramming ourselves, but we have to understand the programming that was given to us, right? So our chapter focus is, Fanon is examining what it means to live as a Black person in a white dominated world, right? He explains how Black identity is shaped not from within, but by the white gaze, stereotypes, and the weight of colonial racism. Our Black world, the world that we live in, yes, we have constructed a lot of things in our world, but the foundation of our world is white supremacy, especially in Black America. The foundation of who we are, what we've become. And if we continue existing the way we exist, what our future will still be all constructed on the foundation of white supremacy and through that white gaze. So how do we change that, right? Understanding the root of the problem. Stop dealing with the symptoms, but deal with the root of the problem. Once you deal with the root of the problem and you eradicate that root, you will eliminate the symptoms, right? So this chapter's key points are: the white gaze defines Blackness, the weight of history, objectification on the Black body, the fact of Blackness, the burden of stereotypes, double consciousness and alienation, existential struggle for humanity, and the psychological impact. And of course, you know, we're going to get into Fanon's main argument and the closing thought for the video, right? But reimagining or re-seeing ourselves, rethinking about ourselves, reshaping our total existence. We have to reshape totally how we exist, right? How we walk. Because remember, Neely Fuller explained to us thoroughly that white supremacy, it dominates all areas of human activity. All areas. And in all of these areas, we are seen through the white gaze, and we see ourselves and we exist through this white gaze. So how do we change that? That's what we get into. So this is page 112. I'm at the last paragraph on page 112. Remember, link is in the description. If you don't have a copy of this book, you tripping. Go get your copy. Like this video, comment, subscribe, share. I hope you checked out my live earlier. We got it in. So thank you to everybody who continues to support this channel. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're in the month of September, so let's keep going strong. I'm on my way to 100,000 subscribers. I need y'all help. Let's make the month of September a great, great month over here. Let's drop some information and have a lot of fun. You know how we do it over here. Please hit the like button, comment, subscribe. Let's get it. On this day, completely dislocated, unable to be abroad with the other, the white man who unmercifully imprisoned me, I took myself far off from my own presence, far indeed, and made myself an object. Remember, we have been objectified by the white man. We are no longer a human. All of our human characteristics have been reduced down to objects. We're even lower than the animals. What else could it be for me but an amputation, an excision, a hemorrhage that splattered my whole body with black blood? But I did not want this rescission, this thematization. All I wanted was to be a man among other men. I wanted to come, lithe and young into the world that was ours and to help to build it together. But I rejected all immunization of the emotions. I wanted to be a man, nothing but a man. Some identified me with my ancestors of mine who have been enslaved or lynched. I decided to accept this. It was on the universal level of the intellect that I understood this inner kinship. I was the grandson of slaves in exactly the same way in which President LeBron was the grandson of tax-paying, hard-working peasants. In the main, the panic soon vanished. In America, Negroes are segregated. In South America, Negroes are whipped in the streets. The Negro strikers are cut down by machine guns. In West Africa, the Negro is an animal. And there, beside me, my neighborhood in the university, who was born in Algeria, told me, as long as the Arab is treated like a man, no solution is possible. Understand, my dear boy, color prejudice is something I find utterly foreign. But of course, come in, sir. There is no color prejudice among us. Quite the Negro is a man like ourselves. It is not like because he is black that he is less intelligent than we are. I had a Senegalese buddy in the army who was really clever. Where am I to be classified? Or if you prefer, tuckered away. A Martesian, a native of our old colonies. Where shall I hide? Look at the N-word, mama, a Negro. Hell, he's getting mad. Take no notice, sir. He does not know that you are as civilized as we. See how they see us? They see us as the lowest of the low. That's the white gaze. To see the Negro as the lowest of the low. That's the justification for the treatment. Remember that. If you are an animal, then I can treat you like I treat other animals. And look how the white people treat animals. Really look at the history of how they treat animals. Right? So the white gaze defines blackness, right? Fanon describes how the black man is consistently seen through the eyes of white people, not as an individual, but as a racial stereotype. You are something that was created, a caricature that was created like a cartoon, like Bugs Bunny. You're not real, but you exist. You have a sort of existence, but it's not the same as mine. You have a sort of humanity, but it's not the same as mine because I am human and you are subhuman, part human, Negro human. This external perception reduces him to blackness, stripping away personal identity, right? So it's like giving a name to a pet. So my dog's name is Henry, but Henry is still a dog. Henry still has to pee outside. Henry still has to sleep on the floor. Henry still has to obey. Henry still has to stay in his place. And then Henry still has to appease through the white gaze. And if not, then Henry is out of line and Henry must be punished. But remember, they treat us way worse than they treat their dogs. And Henry may get a stern talking to, but the Negro can have his whole existence taken away. All right? My body was given back to me sprawled out, distorted, recolored, clad in mourning that the white winter day. The Negro is an animal. The Negro is bad. The Negro is mean. The Negro is ugly. Look, an N-word. It's cool. The N-word is shivering. The N-word is shivering because he is cold. The little boy is trembling because he is afraid of the N-word. The N-word is shivering with cold. That cold that goes through your bones. That handsome little boy is trembling because he thinks that the N-word is quivering with rage. The little white boy throws himself into his mother's arms. Mama, the N-word is going to eat me up. All around me, the white man above the sky tears at its novel. The earth rasps under my feet, and there is a white song. All this whiteness that burns me. I sat down at the fire and I became aware of my uniform. I had not seen it. It's been indeed ugly. I stopped here for who can tell me what beauty is? Where shall I find shelter from now on? I felt an easy, identifiable flood mounting on the countless facets of my being. I was about to be angry. The fire was long since out, and once more the N-word was trembling. Look how handsome the Negro is. Kiss the handsome Negro. Excuse me. Look how handsome the Negro is. Kiss the handsome Negro's ass, madame. Shame flooded her face. At last, I was set free from my rumination. At the same time, I accomplished two things. I identified my enemies and I made a scene. A grand slam. Now no one would be able to laugh. The field of the battle having been marked out, I entered the list. Wait. While I was forgiving, and wanted to love, my message was flung back in my face like a slap. The white world, the only honorable one, barred me from all participation. A man was expected to behave like a man. I was expected to behave like a black man, or at least like an N-word. I shouted a greeting to the world, and the world slashes away my joy. I was told to stay within bounds, to go back to where I belong. They would see then. I had warned them away. Slavery, it was no longer even mentioned. That unpleasant memory, my supposed inferiority, a hoax that it was better to laugh at. I forgot it all, but only on condition that the world was to protect itself against me any longer. I had incisors to test. I was sure they were strong, and besides, what? When it was I who had every reason to hate, to despise, I was rejected. When I should have been begged, implored, I was denied the slightest recognition. I resolved, since it was impossible for me to get away from an inborn complex, to assert myself as a black man. Since the other hesitated to recognize me, there remained only one solution: to make myself known. An anti-Semite, a Jew, Sartre says, they, the Jews, have allowed themselves to be poisoned by the stereotype that others have of them, and they live in fear that their acts will correspond to the stereotype. We may say that their conduct is perpetually overdetermined from the inside. All the same, the Jew can be unknown in his Jewness. He is not wholly what he is. One hopes, one waits. His actions and his behavior are the final detriment. He is a white man, and apart from some rather debatable characteristics, he can sometimes go unnoticed, right? He belongs to the race of those who since the beginning of time have never known cannibalism. But we know that ain't true. What an idea to eat one's father. Simple enough, one has only not to be a N-word. Granted, the Jews are harassed. What am I thinking of? They are hunted down, exterminated, cremated. But these are little family quarrels. The Jew is disliked from the moment he is tracked down. But in my case, everything takes on a new guise. I am given no chance. I am overdetermined from without. I am the slave not of the idea that others have of me, but of my own appearance. And that gets to the other key point, the weight of history. Being Black is not just a personal identity. It carries the weight of slavery, colonialism, and racism. Fanon writes that Black people live with the ever-present past. They were made to embody centuries of oppression in the eyes of the white world. I mean, if you come from a slave history, if you come from a people who were treated like animals and are seen as animals, then why would you be any different? Why should you, as a Black man, be treated as equally as a white man? Look at your history. Matter of fact, you have no history. We gave you a history. We gave you a language. We gave you civilization. We gave you thought. We gave you philosophy. Those pyramids in Egypt, white people built those. And if not white people, aliens. You Negroes do not have the brain capacity to build that. You Negroes do not have the hand strength or the dexterity. Y'all don't have the unity or the organization to build grand monuments like the pyramids in Egypt. Look at your history. The history of the Negro through the white gaze is a history that either doesn't exist or it's a subpar history. It's a history of accomplishing nothing. That's how they betray the Black man or Black people, period, in the world. Because the Black woman is no different. She's lustful. She don't do anything but make babies, be loud, be out there twerking, cussing people out, fighting, drinking, smoking, wearing weave, wigs, eyelashes, you know, getting abortions. When you do put them in positions of power, they mess it up, right? Through the white gaze. But the problem with the white gaze in 2025, the problem with the white gaze is Black people are fighting to live up to it. We're fighting to live up to the stereotypes. Now, one of the things I agree with the brother consciously that he said, but I think it's half the issue, it's half the solution, because he said that us having a knowledge of self would be one of the things that we need to fight this white gaze. And I think we have enough historical information to show that knowledge of self alone is not sufficient to help move us forward as far as past this white gaze. Because even look at the so-called conscious community that is either doesn't exist or it's on life support. These are people who have knowledge of self, but no actions upon that. We don't do anything with the knowledge. There's far and few who do anything with the knowledge, but they're not supported by those who have the knowledge. So you have to have a will to want to be better at the end of the day. As a collective, Black people have to not just know who we are, but want to be better. Want to utilize that information. Education to solve our problems. I'm going to say that ad nauseum. Education should solve our problems. It's not enough for us to learn about history. How do we apply that history? I move slowly in the world, accustomed now to seek, no longer for upheaval. I progress by crawling, and already I'm being dissected under white eyes, the only real eyes. I am fixed, having adjusted their microtones. They objectively cut away slices of my reality. I am laid bare. I feel I see those white faces, that it is not a new man who has come in, but a new kind of man, a new genius. Why? It's a Negro. I slip into corners and my long antenna pick up the catchphrases strewn over the surface of things. N-word underwear smells of N-word teeth or white N-word feet are big, the N-words barrel chest. I slip into corners. I remain silent. I strive for anonymity, for invisibility. look, I would accept a lot as long as no one notices me. And that's not good. Trying to mentally, psychologically exist in this environment where you're being denigrated. Oh, I want you to meet my black friend, Amy Sesar, a black man at the university and a university graduate. Marian Anderson, the finest of Negro singers. Dr. Cobb, who invented the white blood, is a Negro. Here, say hello to my friend from Martinique. Be careful, he's extremely sensitive. Shame. Shame and self-contempt. Nausea. When people like me, they tell me it is in spite of my color. When they dislike me, they point out that it is not because of my color. Either way, I am locked into the infernal circle. I am locked into the infernal circle. I turn away from these inspectors of the ark before the flood, and I attach myself to my brothers, Negroes like myself. To my horror, they too reject me. They are almost white, and besides, they are not about to marry white women. They will have children faintly tinged with brown. Who knows, perhaps, little by little. I have been dreaming. I want you to understand, sir. I'm one of the best friends the Negro has a lion. The evidence was there, unaltered. My blackness was there, dark and unarguable. And it tormented me, pursued me, disturbed me, and angered me. Negroes are savages, brutes, illiterates. But in my own case, I knew that these statements were false. There was a myth of the Negro that had to be destroyed at all costs. The time had long since passed when a Negro priest was an occasion of wonder. We had physicians, professors, statesmen, yes, but something out of the ordinary still clung to such cases. We have a Senegalese history teacher. He's quite bright, but our doctor is colored. He's very gentle. It was always the Negro teacher, the Negro doctor. Brittle as I was becoming, I shivered with the slightest pretext because these, they're saying, are the exceptions. These are the exceptions, right? And that leads me to the objectification of the black body. In white society, the black man is not seen as a subject, a thinking free person, but as an object reduced to his skin color. Everyday encounters such as white child pointing and saying, look, a Negro, reveal how blackness is consistently marked and dehumanized, right? And these, the Negro doctor, the Negro statesman, all those people are the exceptions. Wow, I didn't know Negroes could do this. Because you're illiterate. You can't read. Negroes can't read. Sound familiar? We're in a day and time in 2025 where a lot of our Negro children cannot read. A lot of our adults cannot read proficiently. We've went from battling the stereotypes to becoming the stereotypes. This is just how we live. It's just who we are. There's a history to all of this. That's why we read these books. I know, for instance, that if the physician made a mistake, it would be the end of him and all those who came after him. As long as everything went well, he was praised to the skies, but look out, no nonsense under any conditions. That's how it is living in the white world when you put yourself in the white world. The black physician can never be sure how close he is to disgrace. I tell you, I was walled in. No exception was made for my refined manners, or my knowledge of literature, or my understanding of the quantum theory. I demanded explanations. Gently and to the tone that one uses with a child, they introduced me to the existence of a certain view that was held by certain people. But I was always told we must hope that it will very soon disappear. What was it? Color prejudice. If color prejudice is nothing more than the unreasoning hatred of one race for another, the contempt of the stronger and richer people for those whom they consider inferior to themselves, and the bitter resentment of those who are kept in subjugation and who are frequently insulted. As color It is most obvious outward manifestation of race. It has been made the criterion by which men are judged, irrespective of their social or educational attainments. The light-skinned races have come to despise all those of darker color, and the dark-skinned people will no longer accept without protest the inferior position to which they have been relegated, right? And that leads us to the fact of blackness. For none, right, the fact of blackness means living an identity that is imposed externally, not self-defined. Black people, especially in America, have never had the ability to self-actualize. Black people, listen at me good. Listen at me good. When I say this again, Black people, especially us in America, we have not had the ability. We're not been given the ability, and I'm using those words specifically because I'm talking about a power imbalance, right? We have not been given the ability or even taken the ability to self-actualize. So I believe it's Thomas Sowell is right when he's talking about how Black American culture is shaped. Black American culture was shaped by white American culture, and Black Southern culture was shaped, and it does have roots and foundations in white Southern culture because that's what we borrowed from. Now, it goes to our resilience. We were able to create a culture out of nothing after all of who we are was stripped away from us. We were able to create a culture that inspires and I guess you could say it intrigues the world. It entertains the world. But we don't have a culture that actually get real results. Our culture is more of a culture of artistic progress, but not a lot of tangible human progress, political progress, social civil progress, right? The power imbalance still exists. White supremacy still exists, right? So he also goes to say, it's not simply being Black. It is being forced to carry all myths, fears, and projections that white society attaches to Blackness, right? Because Blackness is this and Blackness is that. Now that takes me to the burden of stereotypes, right? Black men are often stereotyped as hypersexual, primitive, violent, or childlike. These stereotypes shapes interactions and create a world where the Black person is never seen simply as a human being. Caricature, Sexy Red, Young Thug, Drake, all these caricatures, all these internet caricatures that have been created as of late, right? People who are trying to get on because they understand, even the Black conservatives, the Black sellout conservatives, they understand that if I exist in this particular way, then I will be favored by the masses. I will be favored by the dominant society. But I also have to tap dance and buck and coon for that acceptance. I had read it rightly. It was hate. I was hated, despised, detested, not by the neighbor across the street or my cousin on my mother's side, but by the entire race. It was up against something unreasoned. The psychoanalysis says that nothing is more traumatizing for a young child than its encounters with what is rational. I would personally say that for a man whose only weapon is reason, there's nothing more neurotic than contact with unreason. I felt knife blades open within me. I resolved to defend myself. As a good tactician, I intended to rationalize the world and to show the white man that he was mistaken. In the Jew Jean-Paul Sartre says, there is a sort of impassioned imperialism of reason, for he wishes not only to conceive others that he is right. His goal is to persuade them that there is an absolute and unconditioned value to rationalism. He feels himself to be a missionary of the universal against the universality of the Catholic religion from which he is excluded. He asserts that Catholicism, Catholicism of the rational, an instrument by which to attain to the truth and establish a partial bond among men. And the author adds, though there may be Jews who have made there may have been Jews who have made intuition the basic category of their philosophy. The intuition he has no resemblance to the Pascalian subtlety of spirit, and it is this latter based on 1,000 imperceptible perceptions, which to the Jew seems his worst enemy. As for Bergson, his philosophy offers the curious appearance of an anti-intellectualist doctrine constructed entirely by the most rational and most critical of intelligences. It is through argument that he establishes the existence of pure duration of philosophic intuition, and that very intuition which discovers duration over life or itself universal, since anyone may practice it, and it leads towards the universal, since these objects can be named and conceived. With enthusiasm, I set to cataloging and probing my surroundings. As times change, one has been the Catholic religion at first justified and then condemned slavery and prejudices. But by referring everything to the idea of dignity of man, one had ripped prejudice to shreds. After much reluctance, the scientists had conceded that the Negro was a human being in vivo and in vitro. The Negro had been proved analogous to the white man. The same morphology, the same histology. Reason was confident of victory on every level. I put all parts back together, but had to change my tune. The victory played cat and mouse. It made a fool of me. As the other put it, when I was present, it was not when I was there. I was no longer. In the abstract, there was agreement. The Negro is a human being. That is to say, amended the less firmly convinced that, like us, he has his heart on the left side. But on certain points, the white man remained intractable. Under no conditions did he wish any intimacy between the races, for it is a truism that crossings between widely different races can no longer be physical and mental level. Until we have a more definite knowledge of the effect of race crossings, we should certainly do best to avoid crossings between widely different races. For my own part, I would certainly know how to react. And in one sense, if I were asked for a definition of myself, I would say that I am one who waits. I investigate my surroundings. I interpret everything in terms of what I discover. I become sensitive. In the first chapter of the history that the others have compiled for me, the foundation of cannibalism has been made eminently plain in order that I may not lose sight of it. My chromosomes were supposed to have a few thicker or thinner genes representing cannibalism. In addition to the sex length, the scholars had discovered the racial length. The racial length. What a shameful science. But I understand this psychological mechanism, for it is a matter of common knowledge that the mechanism is only psychological. 2 centuries ago, I was lost to humanity. I was a slave forever. And then came men who said that it had all gone for too long. My tenaciousness did the rest. I was saved from the civilizing deluge. I have gone forward. But let's go back to the psychological job that's happening, right? We're going to beat it into your brains. We're going to make it the main messages that you ingest. You are what you eat. And if you are what you eat, you're going to eat all of this negativity. You're going to eat all of this rhetoric that says that Your blackness is inferior. You're accountable. Y'all eat people. A white person, a white supremacist, is trying to convince black people that we eat people. All right. But you see what's going on. The savage is trying to convince the civilized that we're savage. The savage has convinced the civilized that we're savage. The savage has become the civilized, and the civilized has become the savage. The programming, social engineering. Too late. Everything is anticipated, thought out, demonstrated, made the most of. My trembling hands take hold of nothing. The vein has been mined out. Too late. But once again, I want to understand. Since the time when someone first mourned the fact since the time when someone first mourned the fact that he had arrived too late and everything had been said, a nostalgia for the past has seems to persist. Is this the lost original paradise of which Otto Rank speaks? How many such men, apparently rooted to the womb of the world, have devoted our lives to studying the Delphic oracles or exhausted themselves in attempts to plot the wanderings of Ulysses? The pan-spiritualists seek to prove the existence of a soul in animals by using this argument. A dog lies down on the grave of his master and starves to death there. We had to wait for Janet to demonstrate that the aforesaid dog, in contrast to man, simply lacked the capacity to liquidate the past. We speak of the glory of Greece, Artaud says, but he adds, if modern man can no longer understand the Cleopatra of Aeschylus, it is Aeschylus who is to blame. It is tradition to which the anti-Semites turn in order to ground the validity of their point of view. It is tradition. It is that long historical past. It is that blood relation between Pascal and Descartes that is invoked when the Jew is told there is no possibility of your finding a place in society. No long ago, one of those good Frenchmen said in a train where I was sitting, just let the real French virtues keep going and the race is safe. Now more than ever, national union must be made a reality. Let's have an end of internal strife. Let's face up to the foreigners. Here, he turned toward my corner. No matter where they are, it must be said in his defense that the stank of cheap wine, if he had been capable of it, he would have told me that my emancipated slave blood could not possibly be stirred by the name of Villon or I don't know how to say that word. Tying, or Villon or tying. An outrage. The Jew and I, since I was not satisfied to be racialized, by a lucky turn of fate, I was humanized. I joined the Jew, my brother in misery, in outrage. At first thought, it may seem strange that the anti-Semites outlook should be related to that of the Negro. It was my philosophy professor, a native of the Antilles, who recalled the fact to me one day. Whenever you hear anyone abuse the Jews, pay attention because he's talking about you. And I found that he was universally right, but which I meant that I was answerable in my body and in my heart for what was done to my brother. Later, I realized that he meant quite simply an anti-Semite is inevitably anti-Negro. You come too late, much too late. There will always be a white world between you and us. The other's total inability to liquidate the past once and for all. In the face of his effective analysis of the white man, it is understandable that I could have made up my mind to utter my Negro cry, little by little putting out pseudopodia here and there. I secreted a race, and that race staggered under the burden of a basic element, What is it? Rhythm. Listen to our singer Leopold Senghor. It is the thing that is most perceptible and least material. It is the archetype of the vital element. It is the first condition of the hallmark of art, as breath is of life. Breath which accelerates or slows, which becomes even or agitated, according to the tension in the individual, the degree and the nature of his emotion. It is rhythm. It is in its primordial purity. It is rhythm in the masterpieces of Negro art, especially sculpture. It is composed of a theme sculptural from which it is set in opposition to a sister theme. It is inhalation. It is exhalation, and that is repeated. It is not the kind of symmetry that gives rise to monotony. Rhythm is alive. It is free. It is how rhythm affects what is least intellectual in us, tyrannically, to make us penetrate to the spiritually of the object, and that character of abandon, which is ours, is itself rhythm. Oh man, they so wild. Hey man, you know, they got this rhythm. I mean, you know, they don't understand that even to have this rhythm comes of some intelligence comes from this rhythm. But they're saying, hey man, you could be the most primordial beast and still have this kind of rhythm. Not understanding the type of intelligence that it takes to have this and produce it, right? Had I read that right, I read it again with redoubled attention. From the opposite end of the white world, a magical Negro culture was hailing me. Negro sculpture. I began to flush with pride. Was this our salvation? I had rationalized the world, and the world had rejected me on the basis of color prejudice. Since no agreement was possible on the level of reason, I threw myself back toward unreason. It was up to the white man to be more irrational than I. Out of the necessities of my struggle, I had chosen the method of regression, but the fact remained that it was an unfamiliar weapon. Here I am at home. I made myself the irrational. I wade in the irrational, up to the neck in the irrational, and now my whole voice vibrates. Those who invented neither gunpowder nor the compass, those who never learned to conquer steam or electricity, those who never explored the seas or skies, but they know the farthest corners of the land of anguish, those who never knew any journey save that of abduction, those who learned to kneel to docility, those who were domesticated and Christianized, those who were injected with bastardly. Yes, all those are my brothers, a bitter brotherhood, imprisons all of us alike. Having stated the minor thesis, I went overboard after something else. But those without whom the earth would not be the earth. Tumescence, all the more fruitful than the empty land, still more the land, storehouse to guard and ripen all. On earth, that is more earth. My blackness is no stone, it's deafness, hurled against the clamor of the day. My blackness is no drop of lifeless water on the dead eye of the world. My blackness is neither a tower nor a cathedral. It thrusts into the red flesh of the sun. It thrusts into the burning flesh of the sky. It hollows through the dense dismay of its own pillar of patience. Hey, the tom-tom chatters out of the cosmic message. Only the Negro has the capacity to convey it, to decipher its meanings, its import. Astride the world, my strong healing spurring into the flanks of the world. I stare into the shoulders of the world as the celebrant stares at the midpoint between the eyes of the sacrificial victim. But they abandon themselves, possessed to the essence of all things, knowing nothing of externals, but possessed by the movement of all things, uncaring to subdue, but playing the play of the world, truly the eldest sons of the world, open to all the breaths of the world, meeting place of all the winds of the world, undrained bed of all the waters of the world, spark of the sacrifice fire of the world, flesh of the world, throbbing with the very movement of the world. Blood, birth, ecstasy of becoming, 3/4 engulfed in the confusions of the day. I feel myself reddened with blood. The arteries of all the world convulsed, torn away, uprooted, have turned toward me and fed me. Blood. Blood. All your blood stirred by the male heart of the sun. Sacrifice was a middle point between the creation and myself. Now I went back no longer to sources, but to the source. Nevertheless, one had to distrust rhythm, earth mother love, this mystic carnal marriage of the group and the cosmos. In La Vie Sexuelle and Afrique Noire, a rich work in perceptions, the Pedrals implies that always in Africa, no matter what field to study, it will have a certain magical structure, he adds. All these are elements that one finds again on the still greater scale in the domain of secret societies. To the extent, moreover, to which persons of either sex subjugated to circumcision during adolescence are bound under penalty of death, not to reveal to the uninitiated what they have experienced. And to the extent to which initiation into a secret society always excites the acts of sacred love, there is good ground to conclude by viewing both male and female circumcision and the rites that they embellish as constitutive of the minor secret societies. I walk on white nails, sheets of water threaten my soul on fire. Face to face with these rites, I am doubly alert. Black magic, orgies, witches, sabbaths, heathen ceremonies, amulets, coitus is an occasion to call on the gods of the clan. It is a sacred act, pure, absolute, bringing invisible forces into action. What is one to think all these manifestations, all these initiations, all these acts? From very direction, I am assaulted by the obscenity of dances and of words. Almost at my ear, there's a song. First, our hearts burned hot. Now they are cold. All we think of now is love. When we return to the village, when we see the great phallus, and how then we make love, for our parts can be dry and clean. And I'm gonna stop my reading there, and that is page 126. I'm gonna stop my reading. But let's get into the rest of these notes, right, and bring this all home, right? The next note is, and taking into account everything I just read, right? The double consciousness and alienation. Fanon echoes W.E.B. Du Bois's concept of double consciousness. Black people see themselves through their own eyes and through the eyes of white society. So how do we know when we're seeing ourselves through which eyes? That's a good question, right? Do we see ourselves through our own eyes when we're around each other? Or do we still see ourselves through white eyes when we're around each other? Do we only see ourselves through our own eyes when we are alone by ourselves in our personal spaces? Do we mostly see ourselves through white eyes rather than our own? This creates a painful alienation. The Black person is never allowed to be just a man or just a woman, but always a Black. And we're in a world now where people are trying to tell us that we need to stop calling ourselves Black, and we need to stop referring to ourselves as a color, and we need to stop referring to ourselves through the lens of race, as if we started this, as if we was given this. The world has seen Black people through the lens of race since 1492. Well, since after that, right? But that kicked it off. So you can't create the society that sees everyone through a lens of race. You can't create the concept of race and then tell the victims that they're wrong for how they exist when you socially engineered the victims to exist the way they exist. So yes, we see ourselves through the lens of being Black because you all put us on the team. You all created this racial dynamic. We didn't. Existential struggle for humanity. Fanon insists that Black people must fight to assert themselves as full human beings beyond the imposed criteria, beyond the imposed categories of race. And I believe that fight needs to be an internal fight first and then an external fight. And when I say that internal, that means an internal fight within ourselves as individuals and as a collective of Black people, because even as a collective, we don't see each other as humans, as Black people. We don't recognize our own humanity. That's why we take each other's lives like we do. He rejects both assimilation to whiteness and romanticized existentialism of Blackness, seeking a new path to authentic human liberation, because who Black people in America are and who Black people in the world are needs to be defined by us through our own autonomous means, absent of the white gaze. Who are we really? Not who we've been told we are, but who are we truly? Do we know? African people, Black people throughout the world. Who are we truly? How do we define ourselves absent of the white gaze? And then we talk about the psychological impact, right? Consistent objectification leads to internalized inferiority and self-doubt. Fanon describes the trauma of being reduced to skin color in every interaction. I am over-determined from without. So I understand that the world looks down upon me. So I in turn internalize that. And I began to look down upon myself and others who look like me, because there's no way that we should be in a position that is righteous, that is glorious, that is victorious, that is dominant. We believe the negative stereotypes. We believe the stories. We believe that we are a cursed people. I don't know about y'all, but I ain't come from no line of cursed people. All right? So, Fanon's main point in this chapter, right? He's talking about Black identity under colonial racism is not self-determined, but imposed by the white gaze. To be Black is to be forced into a role, reduced to stereotypes, and alienated from one's humanity. True liberation requires breaking free from this imposed identity and affirming Black people as subjects, not as objects. That's why Gil Scott-Heron went back to saying the revolution would not be televised. The revolution would not be televised. The revolution would not be televised. The revolution would not be televised, because it has to start in the mind first. That's why they continuously war on our minds. They continuously bombard us with the negative messaging. They continuously prop up negative Black behavior, negative Black culture, because this stereotype is what we said you are, and this is what you will be. How dare you try to humanize yourselves? And we have to look back at them and say, damn, all you talking about, because we are the original humans, and you would never take that away from us. So we not only know our history, but we've learned to use all the information we have to change our circumstances, and it starts by stepping on you. All right? So the closing thought for the video is, Fanon's most personal and existential reflection, it asks, what does it mean to exist when the world refuses to see your humanity and only sees your skin? Once again, what does it mean to exist when the world refuses to see your humanity and only sees your skin? And I'm going to add on to that. What does it mean to exist when the world refuses to see your humanity and only sees your skin, while pretending not to see your skin and pretending to see your humanity? Like this video, comment, subscribe, share, hit that like button, hit that like button, hit that like button. Make sure you tell a friend to tell a friend. Thank you all for supporting this video, supporting this channel. We're getting it in. Happy Monday. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy this holiday. Chill out, relax. Hope you enjoyed the live video that I dropped earlier. We got it in. We had fun. Stop the scamming. Stop the scamming. Stop the scamming. But once again, living up to the stereotypes, the white gaze. We have to start seeing ourselves through our own lens. It will change a lot. I love y'all. Make sure y'all catch the next video.